All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Matt Vogt. Matt, how's it going?
It's going great, Michael. It's good to be back on the show. It's been a long time.
I know it was episode 131 where you were on. So it's been
Yes.
years. You're married now. Your practice is extremely thriving, right? You're a coach for the lifestyle practice. And then at the same time, you're killing it in golf. So you're doing it all, man. You're making it happen. But if you can, for our listeners, right? Can you kick things off by telling us a bit about your practice and your business too, as well? But who are you serving and what are some of the unique things you're doing for your patients?
Yeah, sure. We talked, I think it was 2019.
Possibly.
Yeah, since married, we have a 4-month-old daughter.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Big things happening. But man, it's been a journey. So my startup practice has been open now for over 6 years. We've grown from day one, myself and a dental assistant and a front desk team member to now 3 front desk team members, 3 full-time assistants, 3 hygienists, and then 2 doctors, myself and my associates. So it's been a journey. I'll tell you what, though, it's been so rewarding to look back on it. We have a really awesome team and a culture now that almost runs itself, which is really neat to see. And so it's been an extremely rewarding 6 years.
6 years, man. Nice. Okay. So the team that grew so fast, right? Are any of the original members there? Or?
A couple are very early on. And then that's something that I've been very happy with, proud of, whatever you want to call it. And having now long tenured team members on the team, you really start to value not just as team members working for you, but as people too. And so that's been really cool, the relationships that you start to form with long-term team members and dedicated employees. So a few have been almost from the start. Yeah.
We'll dive back into that. And something you mentioned is about the culture, right? It kind of runs itself. Does it make sense to say, like, hey, day one, we're open, we're going to have this type of culture? Or is it something that develops through time and you realize this is our practice?
It's a really good question. I think one of the toughest things for me being a young startup dentist was to identify how to lead a team and how to create a culture. And every person is going to be different in how they do that. I firmly believe that. Every dentist, we're all unique people. So we're not all going to lead the same. Sure, there's things that we can all do that are fairly similar, but I think getting the right people in place is the most important thing. People who are willing to row the boat in the same direction as everybody else. Having good people is the most important thing. And then, like I said, the culture kind of takes shape on its own. I have learned so much from mistakes and things I've done wrong, and I try to pass that along to others now. So hopefully they don't make them. But I think I tried to have a stranglehold on the practice and the culture. If I had to go back and do it differently, I would have found the right people, instilled in them values and ways that we wanted to do things in the practice, and then just let them do their thing.
What do you mean by that? You had like a stranglehold on the employees or the practice?
I mean, a little bit of both. I'm sure anybody who's listening to this is thinking thoughts like, if I have a dental practice of my own, a startup of my own, it's my baby, right? It's mine. I guess you could call it micromanagement of people and of personalities or of every little thing in the business. As you grow in practice, as I grew in practice, you realize it's not feasible to micromanage every little thing. And at some point, you've just got to trust people to do their best, to act in good faith for your practice. So in a way, I felt like I was trying to manage every little part of people's personalities and every little aspect of their day instead of just giving them some guidelines and then letting them be good people and good employees and just do their thing.
Now, when you were giving people or your employees the guidelines, how'd you know those were like the set guidelines? And then how did you know if, hey, these guidelines are great, you're just kind of making too many excuses versus the other way where it's like, maybe my guidelines aren't that great?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hiring the right people, it's very difficult. And for anybody, not just small business owners, any industry, a lot of it's a guessing game. People who are awesome in interviews can be terrible employees. And people who might not really come out of their shell in interviews can turn into awesome team members and employees. It's so difficult to hire good people. But I've realized over the past 6 years that once you've got a good person and you can confirm that through their actions and their intentions, they are worth their weight in gold. And it's so important to prioritize them and their careers and their happiness above your own. It's that saying that leaders eat last. Prioritizing the happiness of your team members, something that I've tried to do more and more over the years, and it's been one of the best decisions. I want everyone to feel like our practice is a great place to work. It's not all rainbows and unicorns every day, certainly. Having that mindset shift of prioritizing them over me has been huge. And then the funny thing about it is that's benefiting me and the growth of my business too. So it's a win-win when that happens.
Once you got the good person and you started prioritizing them over you, what were some of like these struggles you noticed you were facing early on within yourself, but then at the same time, maybe depending on an employee that wasn't like an A player, maybe they were in the wrong seat or they were just in the wrong place?
This is one of the most common things now working with other dentists, coaching them through whether it's their startup, their acquisition, wherever they are in practice. It's one of the most common things that we're working through and talking about is managing people and personalities. And like you just said, the A plus people on your team, they don't need you a lot of the time. They need some support here and there, but those people are the best. And like I said, if you've got them on your team, oh my gosh, they're worth their weight in gold. And you should be prioritizing them and their career and their happiness. But the people that are really difficult to manage are those B minus C plus people, because they're just barely doing what you need them to do, but not to the level that you really need to have a successful business. And at the end of the day, I've learned this over the years, it comes down to what you're going to tolerate as a business owner and what your expectation is for your practice. Because if you're allowing someone who's a C plus employee to get away with certain things and you keep them on your team and you're not correcting those actions or telling them, hey, this isn't going to work out and firing them, then you're saying to yourself, I am accepting of this level of work and this quality of action. And you're telling that to the rest of your team too. By allowing that to go on, it can infect your other team members as well. And we've all ran into that type of person on our teams. And if you're listening to this and you haven't yet, you will. And it's so important to not let that persist for too long and try to nip it in the bud whenever you see it.
So then to you personally, or like in your business, what did you not tolerate? So for example, could a B player ever look at an A player and say, they do it, so I'm going to do that too, but they are able to handle that type of management compared to the B player?
We run small businesses, a lot of us, even myself with 10 employees. It's probably more than most dentists. So we run small businesses. So we just need people in our businesses. And that can be tricky, right? I'm sure you've had tons of guests and talks on the podcast about hiring and over the last few years, how difficult it's been. And so a common example that I see is someone who is able to do basic tasks. It's beneficial for them to be around as another set of hands, but maybe they stir the pot for no reason. Maybe they don't communicate well, or they're abrasive to team members or patients. When incidents come up, you think, it's not how I want this to go, but they are helping. And what would I do if I fired them today? What would I do without them right now? And would I be able to find somebody else? And it's the middle of the summer and I don't want to train that person right now because I want to hang out and it's nice outside, right? We all think that way. That's a really common scenario that I run into and I've seen other dentists run into. And the truth of the matter is, if there's something like that in your practice that you don't want to do, that you're actively avoiding, it's almost guaranteed to be the thing that you need to do and the thing that you need to address. It's amazing how common that is throughout all dental practices and all of business, I guess.
So then, could you give us 3 situations or scenarios where you were in your practice in the middle of the growth from, I guess, 5 years ago to now, where you were like, I'm ready to throw in the towel? Big struggle, huge struggle to me right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I think back, I can think of a lot of moments in my practice, but a few moments where there was a ton of stress and maybe burnout or frustration. And one of the best things that ever happened to me was shifting my mindset to take ownership and acceptance of everything that was going on in my business. So at the beginning, something goes wrong and you just want to play the blame game. Truthfully, felt like I had all the answers. I had it all figured out. So something went wrong, something was frustrating. I was almost offended or almost, oh my gosh, how dare this happen to me? How dare somebody given their 2 weeks notice over Christmas break? What an inconvenience to me, me. And then over time, I've realized that the world doesn't exist for my comfort. The world in business and dentistry doesn't revolve around me. Once I made that shift and just accepted the realities of practice ownership, accepted the realities of patients, they're not all going to be happy-go-lucky every day. A lot of them don't want to see me, and just realize that I can control what I can control within me. That was a big moment. I went from being someone who was, quite honestly, like someone on a short fuse, maybe easily frustrated about all these little things in practice, to just having perspective about life and business in general, to say, you know what? this is going to be imperfect. It's never going to just be the easiest thing in the world. If it were easy, everybody would do it. Everyone would have an amazing practice and life would be great. So, really taking ownership of that and having the right mindset about business has been a complete revelation.
I like that, man. And I love how you said it. The world doesn't exist for my comfort.
So true.
I feel like I kind of recently came to realize like life is simple, but it's not easy. And the thing is we try to make it easy, and that's where it gets complicated. And so for you, I feel like you figured it out in the sense of like, hey, man, the world doesn't exist for my comfort. It's just that simple.
The universe is perfect. It's in equilibrium. The world is going round. The Red Sea isn't parting for me to have a perfect business for everything to go amazingly.
Yeah.
Like that's just the honest truth. If I go to the store after our podcast or go to the UPS store to drop off a package and there's 20 people in line and I expected it to be a 5-minute visit and it's a half-hour visit and I get mad about that, that's a me problem. That's not like I've been wronged by the world. It's a huge mindset shift. And we talk about this all the time on our podcast, the TLP podcast, and just how you as a person and your mindset and your perspective on what's going on in your life is the most important aspect to your success. I'm sure we've both seen it with doctors who are starting practices, growing practices, posts on Facebook about everything that's going wrong in the practice. And you know, when you're looking at that post or whatever it is, you're thinking in the back of your head, I don't think this is a problem with your employees or your location or whatever it is. I think this might be a problem with you.
Well, the clients you coach throughout this process, is that majority? What would you say?
It's one of the biggest things. People's perceptions of themselves and what's going on around them and in their business, but what's possible with their business and what the actual possibilities are for their life. This is kind of a cliche way to say it, but it's so true. Having an abundance mindset to saying there are endless possibilities for my life and not having a scarcity mindset of woe is me, the world is out to get me, nothing's happening for my benefit. And so it's a huge part of coaching. And we always make progress when it comes to working together on mindset and accountability within oneself. It's so cool to see. It's the most rewarding thing in the world to be working with somebody and to see that click. And then all of a sudden, the game changes. Growth occurs both personally and in business. It's just so neat to see. It's awesome.
Yeah, I like that, man. So then how would that transition into like, I'm a one doctor, I'm open for like 2 years. I still only have my front office. Dental assistant just quit. It's just me in the front office now. They're telling you like, I'm positive, right? Like I'm positive. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to stick through it, but we're dying here. Like it's getting worse and worse and worse.
That's tricky because I talk about this a lot in coaching as well. Mindsets and all of the things we've already chatted about today, those are so important, but there are like tangible factors with the dental practice that are also very important. You can use New York City as an example. Do I think it would be easier to grow a startup in Indianapolis, Indiana versus New York City? Absolutely. Yes. That's just fact in my mind. If I were talking to somebody, a doctor who is in the shoes that you described, I think a big part of that is how bad do you want to be different? How bad do you want to grow your practice? For instance, when you and I initially talked and got to know each other a few years ago, you were, I know you still are, big on ground marketing, right? And I almost see it as hustle marketing. Like, how badly do you want to go out and meet people from your community, basically recruit people to come to your practice? And a lot of that costs nothing, right? It costs your time. And I've communicated with people, not necessarily clients, who open a practice and expect things to go exactly their way, expect people to just flow through the door. And that's just not the case. So a dentist in those shoes that you described, I'd say, what are you doing to truly make this work? Because if you're not giving 110%, if you're not doing what it takes to be exceptional, then just don't do it. Because caught in that limbo stage is the worst place to be. If you're not going to put in what it takes to have an amazing practice, then be an associate, play the safe game, and don't jump into the world of business if you're not fully prepared to do what it takes. I realize that sounds harsh, and it's a tough question to answer without knowing the nuances of a situation like that. So often it comes down to, are you willing to do what it takes?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's a really good teacher or coach is one that says like, I don't think this is for you. So to you, what do you look at when you're in a conversation with them or something and you're like, hey, this person, yes, this is meant for you, but you got to put in the grit, you got to put in the perseverance, be consistent. And then where is it where it's be an associate? It's going to be much better for you.
Yeah. I had an amazing coach in my practice in Justin Short who founded TLP. And it's been awesome over the last few years to kind of follow in his footsteps and carry on the tradition of TLP and help people just like he helped me. And so I think what's so important in a coaching relationship is 100% honesty. And that's something that we believe in our practice as well. 100% honesty at all times. Because if we feel like we have to mince words with each other, if I feel like I have to let you down gently with my perspective on what's going on, that's not accomplishing what we need to accomplish. I'm not telling you what you need to hear. Or an easy way to say it is just tough love a lot of the time. Hey, I understand where you're coming from, but let's look at it from this perspective. And I think that's going to help you. And that takes time. It's like going to therapy, right? You don't go to one session of therapy to fix your issues in your life and walk out of there cured, right? It takes time and it takes repetition and all of those things. So for some, it's very quick. And for some, it takes a lot of time and effort and energy. But just like we said before, if it were easy, everybody would do it. How often do we look back in our lives on things that we've done, hard work we've put in, even if it's been difficult? And almost always it's been beneficial and shaped us into who we are today. And so that's always the perspective I'm trying to bring to coaching clients is, I know this is hard right now. I know you might not be seeing benefit immediately. Let's think about what this could look like a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road.
Okay, nice, man. So then, besides the honesty part, why did you go with Justin Short?
Justin and TLP in general, and that was back in 2019, right around probably when I talked to you. I had gone through coaching, consulting, just like my partners now, Derek Williams and Steve Vandegraff, had gone through coaching and consulting that was very much cookie cutter. Okay, you've signed up for my help. Here's how to do it. Here's the binder of secrets. Here's the systems manual, and implement this and your practice will run the way that you want it to and life will be great. And it's just not true. It's just the honest answer. It's not true. The business systems are important and the metrics of your practice are very important. But what attracted me to TLP was the emphasis on growing a practice through your leadership, your mindset, and your intentions each day. And so that's one thing I learned both with Justin and just growing over as a person is that there's so much minutia that oftentimes we think is important in growing our businesses or improving our personal lives. But it's really about focusing on the lowest hanging fruit, big picture items, and doing those things day after day to really see results. You talked about golf, and that's definitely a passion of mine outside of coaching and being a dentist. And it's just like golf. It's just like sports. I can go to the driving range and hit 500 balls every day, and I might go out and play and be worse tomorrow and shoot a worse score than I did yesterday. What am I going to say if that happens? I'm not going to say, I have to blow everything up. Nothing I'm doing is correct. This is too hard. No, you've got to stick to the process. Business is the same way. You've got to stick to the process and keep yourself accountable or have somebody else like a coach who can help you keep accountable and see the forest through the trees.
I like that, man. So then what do most practice owners think is important that's really minutia? If you can get like kind of granular, specific. Yeah.
There's so many things. In a past life, I was guilty of all of these. The first step in growing a practice in my mind, and something we often do right off the bat, is evaluate where we're spending money. Because a lot of dentists and a lot of practices have overhead that's very, very high. So where are we spending money? Can we cut and save on supplies, labs, those types of things? Very, very basic. While it's important to have good relations with your vendors and not be overpaying for things you shouldn't, once you know that you're in a pretty good area there, it is so not important to the success of a practice. I can't even express how unimportant it is to get the best price on cotton rolls or bond, get a crown for $80 instead of $90. So unimportant. But dentists and certain types of people love to focus on that. They love to focus on reducing overhead. And once again, it comes back to a growth mindset versus a scarcity mindset. It's not about cutting costs. It's not about reducing everything that you're spending. It's about growth. It's about growing your top line, not reducing your bottom line when it comes to growing a successful practice. But it is so common to see a focus on reducing expense. And it's just so not important to really grow a successful practice at the end of the day.
Focus on the top line instead of trying to save so much on the bottom line. Anything else when it comes to the minutia things like, for example, marketing? Is there anything in marketing that you think
That's a good question. I would love to hear your perspective on this because I always love hearing and thinking about marketing. Let me flip it to you. What do you think?
On the things that are minutia, I mean, it just
Yeah.
depends on an analysis that you do and where your demographics is at, right? I mean, like I'm really biased. I
Hmm.
think everybody should always just all the time be ground marketing, right? Maybe not to like the level of like when you did a startup, but maybe like you can tone it
Uh-huh.
down, you know what I mean? Kind of a thing a couple times a year, month, or whatever. So yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
what it would be for me. And then the 20/80 rule, right? You kind of start looking and you're like, okay, this is where we're getting it mostly from reviews and Google ads, right? Let's focus on that
Hmm.
now, right? Let's turn it up a little bit in that section instead
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
Facebook ads and all that other stuff. But that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. What about you?
I like that. I agree with you. I think about my experience in marketing for my practice, and you're exactly right. At the beginning, I had all the time, energy. My off days, I would go to the local donut shop. I would put my logo on the donuts and I would take those to different businesses, not like dental related businesses, just a barber. It's a hair
Mhm.
salon with employees who talk to people and know people and just go chit chat. And I would do that regularly for a long time. I would go on Facebook Live. I basically built my practice on Facebook Live initially, and I still recommend that. I think it's huge. Some level of ground marketing is so important in growing your practice. But 80/20 rule over time, I've done a lot less of that. I've done a lot less Facebook Live, done a lot less social media, still try to do some here and there for the practice. I go and get donuts on my off day anymore and deliver them. But that's because, like you said, there are other things that provide us what we need as far as new patients go and marketing. Google reviews, having a great reputation in the community, internal referrals. That snowball has started to roll down the hill on its own. As you grow, it just starts to happen because you've got more people and more eyeballs on your practice. So, yeah, I agree with you. I see the same thing when it comes to marketing.
Awesome, man. And so then what's some of the biggest ROIs that have given you the most with lowest hanging fruit on your practice?
A couple things that come to mind for me are adding good people, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, and not being afraid to do so because they cost money. You have to invest in your practice to grow it. And so being quick to expand your team if it's necessary. If you're booked out weeks and weeks for a hygienist and you've got room to have another hygienist in your office, not being afraid to pull that trigger. In my case, having 8 operatories available, one of the best decisions I ever made was building out the practice and having that space. Sure, it costs a bit more up front. And I'm not advocating for everybody to go build as many operatories as they can. It's going to be very specific to your situation. But doing that and having the space for multiple doctors at a time if we need to, or additional providers and hygienists has been a huge item. Another thing that comes to mind, and I recently did a podcast this week on our podcast, is learning to make quick decisions in the practice, saying yes or no as quickly as I can, or to delegate as quickly as I can without this constant deliberation. It's that analysis paralysis that we can all kind of get into with decisions. But in any industry, in any type of business, not just dentistry, really successful business owners are making decisions and living with those decisions and tweaking their businesses and dealing with the after effects after they've made those decisions. They're not deliberating for weeks about where to get their supplies or where to get their cotton rolls. They're not deliberating for a ton of time about the tiniest little decisions, or they're not going into their practice to troubleshoot a computer on the weekend. They're understanding my time is worth something, and in order to grow, I have to leverage other people's time and pay people who are talented at what they do to do things for me. And I have to do that quickly. If I deliberate constantly on every little decision in my practice, that's just how you completely stunt your growth. So I'd say having the wherewithal to say yes or no and just make decisions and take action on things has been one of the best things I could have ever done for the growth of my practice. And I see that a lot with clients too. I mean, to bring it back to TLP, getting fellow dentists comfortable with making decisions and living with those decisions. It's very liberating for a lot of people because that's not how we often think.
That's nice, man. I like that. Being quick with it. I guess
Mhm.
when it comes to learning to make quick decisions, how do we know it's quick and not reckless?
Great question. Having that filter to quickly know if this is a decision that needs to be deliberated on, or can I make that snap decision? Having that filter and that understanding is also a skill that you need to develop too. A perfect example, and I use this all the time, is the location of my startup practice. That is not a quick yes or no answer. It's not, hey, I'm going to go out Yeah, that looks good. Let's sign a lease right there. Right.
Yeah.
That's a very obvious one. Something like a vendor in your practice who's going to clean the windows every few weeks. It shouldn't be you as a practice owner, right?
Mhm.
Your time is worth a lot more, not just your time, but your energy. Find somebody, hire them, and be done with it. And live with the consequences. If they don't clean your windows the way you want them to, find somebody else. But go worry about things that are going to give you a better return on your time and energy. It's through experience, maybe through working with other people who have done it before you to develop that sense of how much deliberation you should be giving to decisions. But a lot of the time, it's very obvious.
Okay, that's nice, man. And so when it comes to quick decisions, what about with potential team members? What filters do you utilize for that to make it not super long, but then at the same time, pretty quick?
There is a big part of trusting your gut when it comes to people in hiring. I truly believe that. One of the first filters that I use is that first phone call. A lot of the time, I like to try to get potential candidates on the phone for a few minutes before scheduling an interview to just see how they communicate. And in today's day and age, it's a hassle to get anybody on the phone. Nobody wants to talk on the phone. Everyone wants to let everything go straight to voicemail. We're like afraid to interact with each other, which is a whole other podcast, right? But I want to get somebody on the phone and I just want to have a conversation with them. And if there's someone that I feel comfortable talking to, and if I think viewing them as an employee of mine and then viewing it from the lens of a potential patient, how do they make me feel? Do they seem warm and inviting? Do they seem like a good-hearted person? Do I think they're telling me the truth? Do they have manners? Those things are so important. And a lot of the time, it's your gut that you can just go off of initially to think if someone's going to be a good fit for your practice. We all know those people that you interact with and you're just like, something doesn't quite rub me the right way about this person. Something feels off. It's like they're hiding something from me, or I'm just not enjoying this interaction. When I look back to my lessons learned, I won't call them failures because I've definitely learned from all of them. I can find a moment early on where I've gotten that gut feeling that, I don't think this is going to be the right type of person. I just don't think this is going to be a good fit based on my gut. That sounds very simple and very cliche, but as you do it more and more, you start to develop those little insights into what you're really looking for in a team member.
Do you think when you're listening to your gut and you hire the person, do you think now when you see them and you're like, hey, they do have that thing or they are not really well or whatever, right? But it's more magnified now because you've always told yourself something is wrong, but I'm going to go with my roll the dice here and hire them kind of a thing. And you hired them. And now I don't want to say the words infested, but it's more like it's already stained with that gut feeling. When in reality, your other team members are probably like, I don't see that, Matt. I don't see it either, kind of a thing. But you do, and you feel it.
When I'm looking for a team member to hire, can they communicate well over email? Can they communicate well over the phone? Do they seem courteous? Do they have a respect for the situation? Like, I want somebody to have a respect for how they're applying to the job and respect for my time, but also a respect for themselves in a way. Like, if we set a time to talk on the phone, for instance, for an interview, and they're late to that call, or they want to reschedule it, it's not necessarily a deal breaker, but trusting my gut and trusting what I'm thinking about the situation tells me, how much do you actually value this position? Certainly not saying I'm this important or my practice is this important, but if you had a meeting set up with the president of the United States and it was at 1 p.m., something came up, right? Would you text them or call them and be like, hey, can we meet at like 1:10? No, you wouldn't do that. That's an extreme example, but you would go to great lengths to make that work. And you wouldn't toss any baggage from your personal life into that interaction. You would say, oh, I'm so sorry I'm running late. This and this happened. You would figure it out and make it work. That's just one little, almost silly example. But those little things are the things that you can pick up on with hiring to help differentiate from someone who would be a success versus not being a success in your practice.
Oh, man, I love that example. Awesome. And then one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is something you mentioned about burnout that you would experience. So today, what advice can you give us when we're experiencing burnout?
Burnout in dentistry is very real. And I think a lot of it comes from the expectations that we put ourselves under as dentists. It starts from dental school, almost like this expectation to give our lives up to our patients. And we internalize being a dentist as part of our identity and part of our personality. And I don't think that's healthy for a lot of us. It wasn't healthy for me, I know for sure. And that's where I started to experience burnout and frustration in practice, even though my practice was doing very well, is almost like this pressure I put on myself to dedicate my life to my patients. And once I started to realize what was possible in my practice, I realized that I could work less. It was okay to want to make an awesome living from my practice. It was okay to want to run a profitable practice and think about dollars and cents versus what was attempted to be instilled in me in dental school, which was to never think about money in practice and to only focus on clinical dentistry. Once I became accepting of that fact and realized that I didn't have to live or die with every patient outcome, I didn't have to feel like I was available 24/7 for communication with my patients. I still needed to take care of them and have systems in place to make sure that they're okay. But getting out of that and shifting that mindset is one of the most important things that ever happened in my career. And that might not be the case for you if you're listening. You might live, eat, sleep dentistry and love every second of it. But I think a lot of us in the dental field could benefit from realizing that dentistry is not who we are. It's just something that we do. And that is totally okay.
Awesome, man. And then so real quick, talk to us about the lifestyle practice, TLP. What are you guys doing over there? How can you help?
Yeah, I'd love to. Like I said, with my partners, Derek and Steve, we help dentists grow their lives and their careers through practice ownership, and has been amazing over the past few years to see growth in fellow colleagues and dentists. I think about all of my past experiences in practice and all the heartache and the stress and the things that we've talked about on multiple podcasts. And I almost want to run through a wall with the energy I have to help my fellow colleagues and clients not run into those same types of things I did, to be on a better foot than I was in practice. So we work mainly with dentists through one-on-one coaching, mainly people who are practice owners or looking to get into practice ownership and starting those steps. Myself, I work with dentists just like that. And also I'm our startup specialist with TLP. I'm having done that before and helping practice owners grow practice from scratch. That's where I focus some of my time as well. That's what we do. We have all seen the benefits of coaching in our lives, and we bring that same passion to our clients.
Nice. Awesome. So Matt, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
So if you're listening to this and you're looking to learn more about TLP or what we do or how coaching can help, feel free to shoot me an email, matt@thelifestylepractice.com, or go to our website, thelifestylepractice.com. We have a free practice assessment survey that you can fill out. It talks about, if you're an owner right now, what your pain points are, what your goals are. If you're an associate, you can let us know, kind of all that information as well, where you're looking to head in ownership. And we'll reach out to you, either myself, Derek, or Steve, and let you know what we think. No obligations, no questions asked. And if you think that we can help, great. But we want to help our fellow dentists get the most out of their practices and their lives and their careers. Sicker than your average, sicker than your average. Sicker than your average.